Take a look at these two pictures. They both show the same ship. This is USS the Sullivans, an American Fletcher-class destroyer that served in the U.S. Navy for more than 15 years. She participated in World War II, spent a little bit of time in reserve, before reactivating for the Korean War and various other Cold War happenings. These two pictures were taken at different points in the Sullivans' career, so there are some very obvious changes to the ship. This gun is missing, the mast is different, and this deckhouse is gone, just to name a few. Changes to things like the ship's weapons, equipment, and overall layout are often obvious, well-documented, or both. For another example, take a look at this diagram. This is still the Sullivans. It's her main deck layout in 1943, just a little bit after she commissioned. I want you to focus on this passageway here. This is the midships passage. It spanned the width of the superstructure with access to these 5 rooms, and there was also a vent just forward of the starboard hatch. If we move forward in time a little, this diagram is still the Sullivans. It's the same midship passage, but after a major refit in the 1950s. The sick bay and battery charging room are largely untouched, except all of the other spaces are different in some way because the Navy added amplitude rooms for the 3-inch 50 anti-aircraft guns directly above. In doing so, they blocked off both of the old entrances to the midship passage, which meant they had to reroute the passage on the starboard side, and they chose to leave the port side blocked off entirely. But this doesn't quite tell the whole story. Despite the rearranged rooms and additions, the outlines of the Sullivans' old superstructure is still visible. It's easy to assume that the shipyard workers built on and around what was already there. However, as the old saying goes, the map is not the territory. These plans only show the locations of bulkheads, not when they were built or if they've been replaced. The only way to know for sure if these bulkheads are the same is to go there and check. Luckily, the Sullivans is preserved in Buffalo, New York, at the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park. So, here we are on the Sullivans' starboard side, walking forward towards the midship passage. This small hatch on the right is for the amplitude room. The larger one on the left is for the new passageway, and this is the bulkhead in question. One of the surefire ways to tell if this steel was on the ship in the 1940s is to find welds from known modifications. In this case, there are 3 welds we know of that we need to look for. The first 2 are from when they removed the old passageway hatch and the vent next to it. The shipyard workers would have welded a steel plate in their place, leaving rectangular welds, usually with rounded corners. We should see them if we peek inside the amplitude room, but when we do look inside, the bulkhead is blank. There is a vertical weld, except this is a seam between the 2 metal sheets that make up the bulkhead. There are no welds shaped like the hatch or the vent. The other weld we can look for is from an insert from 1945, when the Navy installed quadruple 40mm Bofors guns on the platform above us. To get an idea of what I'm talking about, this is what the bulkhead looks like on USS Cass and Young, another Fletcher-class destroyer, except she is still a 5-gun ship with the 40mm Bofors. This whole thing is an insert left behind from when the shipyard workers added these 2 beams to help support the guns. These beams are continuous and pass through the bulkhead, but their shape is difficult to cut into a solid metal sheet. The dockyard workers had to cut a simpler shape into the bulkhead, welded these smaller, more complex shapes onto the beams, then put all of it back into the original, simpler cut. Back on the Sullivans, there is a visible insert in this corner, but it is absolutely not from 1945. We know that when the Navy replaced the Sullivans' 40mm guns with the 3-inch 50s, they moved the mount forward. Any insert from 1945 should be farther aft, leaving a weld mark somewhere around here, but again it's blank. Which means it's safe to say that this section of the bulkhead is not from 1943 when the ship was built. It's probably from 1954 when the Sullivans gained these amplitude rooms along with the 3-inch 50s. Speaking of the 3-inch 50s, If the Navy moved that mount forward and replaced this bulkhead in 1954, what does that mean for the deck and platform overhead? This is another one of those situations where changes to the equipment are obvious, but not how they made those changes. Unfortunately, we can't make out a whole lot from here. In 1962, the Navy extended the platform aft to add the Mark 32 torpedo launchers, and that's why there's this curved metal fin on the overhead. It used to be the edge of the platform before the extension. But to figure out anything else, we're going to need to head up there. So let's head forward again and up that ladder in front of us. It's going to take us up to around here on the superstructure deck. It's exactly where we should find an outline for the original 1943 superstructure, and that's what this raised lip is in the deck. The lower portion is the older deck, while the raised portion is the new addition. With that in mind, we can follow this and see what was, or in some cases still is, the extent of the superstructure. This leg of the tripod mast breaks up the outline for a moment, but it continues on the other side as this weld. And that brings us to what is probably the most modified section on the Sullivans. Right next to the mast leg is our first confirmed feature from 1943. This circular weld is all that is left of the forward torpedoes. This is where the torpedo handling crane used to be, and the crane was on board from 1943 to 1945. So what we're looking at here is the original deck from 1943, a closed opening from removing the crane in 1945, then in the corner is an insert from adding the tripod mast leg in 1951, and finally, this structure and this portion of the deck are from the 1954 refit. Moving forward, the old superstructure weld becomes this seam until we finally reach the area above the midship passage and the spaces connected to it. Here, there's a very clear boundary between the 1940s and the 1950s material. The deck goes from mostly riveted to mostly welded, and it's the welded area that's over the midships passage. We're not entirely sure yet if this riveted material is from 1943 or 1945, but that section has features added during the 1945 refit. These two rows are part of the old 40mm ammunition locker. Then there are a few more closed openings from vents, wires, and some other equipment for the locker. That change from riveted to welded is one indicator that we've changed time periods and that the deck was replaced. Although, Fletchers were built with both rivets and welds, so that change alone is not the only thing we should rely on. Luckily, there are a few more things we can look to on the deck as evidence. The mount for the 3-inch 50s is different than the mount for the twin or quad Bofors, and the mounts that are here are definitely for the 3-inch 50s. There's also no indication of the torpedo launcher from 1943, meaning the deck is probably from after 1945. But in 1945, there would have been a compass right here. Now there's this closed-off vent, and those two weld marks are for a ladder that used to go up the front of the stack. Taken together, all of those are pretty clear signs that they replaced the deck in the 1950s, again, probably at the same time they replaced the bulkheads below. Now, there's one thing that's really thrown us for a loop, and we're still trying to figure it out. It has to do with these two circles or round lines around the 3-inch 50s. We're not really sure what these are. The outer line is where the gun tub is in some places, but not everywhere, and especially not around the starboard mount. Then the inner line is about where we would expect to find a short vertical wall or fin. I'm not sure what to call it, but it was there to help contain spent shell casings from the 3-inch 50s, to stop them from rolling around where people need to walk. On the aft 3-inch 50, the plan shows those same two circular lines. In this case, we know for sure that the outer line is the gun tub, and the inner line is that low piece of metal because they're both still there on the ship today. Back over on the main deck, there are no marks that correspond with those lines. However, there is a mark where that fin used to be. This is the one around the starboard mount, and it's clear that it doesn't wrap almost all of the way around the mount as shown in the plan. We haven't been able to find any historic pictures that show the layout from the plan, so we're starting to think that these don't represent anything that was ever on the ship. I mean, this whole video is about the map not being the territory, so we shouldn't trust the plan too much. But if you know what they are, or have any other ideas, please let us know in the comments. This video wouldn't have been possible without the help from the Buffalo Naval Park. You should check out their YouTube channel if you'd like to learn more about the Sullivans, and they're also open most of the year, so you could see the ship in person if you're ever in Buffalo or Niagara Falls. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please let me know and I'll make more of these for other ships. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss those, and I'll see you next time.